we will share that link on the Power of A website. So I now would like to welcome ASAE's President CEO, Susan Robertson.
Thanks so much, Mary Kate. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. And thank you also for being part of American Associations Week 2020. We are going to have a great session this morning. And as Mary Kate said, we're absolutely honored to have Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger and Congressman Rob Wittman join us for the session today. Now, in addition to joining us virtually, which I know all of you are doing, we encourage you to join ASAE's sign-on letter and also to use our GovPredict advocacy portal to send targeted messages to the Hill along with social media messages. So please take advantage of those. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Denise Roosendaal, who is the Executive Director of the Institute for Credentialing Excellence, and she's also the co-founder of the Professional Certification Coalition, along with ASAE. So Denise, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you so much, Susan. Yes, I'm Denise Roosendaal, I'm the Executive Director for the Institute for Credentialing Excellence, ICE. ICE is a professional membership organization. We have about 430 credentialing bodies representing about 2,500 staff members, and we think thousands of professions are represented by our certification programs. ICE focuses on education, research, and accreditation standards. In fact, many of you may know us by our flagship accreditation program, the NCCA, National Commission for Certifying Agencies. NCCA has accredited about 315 certification bodies from about 134 credentialing bodies. So, but we also have a second accrediting body which focuses on the IC 1100 program, which is for assessment-based certificate programs. ICE is a proud member of the PCC, working alongside ASAE as our partner in the steering committee for the Professional Certification Coalition. It has been such a fantastic partnership. We have gotten so much accomplished in just 2 short years, and I really do appreciate the invitation to be here with you today. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Denise, and we really appreciate your level of involvement and support for the coalition. We're making great inroads, and it's thanks to that diligence, so thank you so much. Now I'm pleased to introduce our 2 speakers today. Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger represents Virginia's 7th Congressional District. Representative Spanberger began her career in public service, first serving as a federal agent with the U.S. Postal Inspection Service, investigating money laundering and narcotics cases, and then serving as a case officer with the Central Intelligence Agency, that's right, the CIA. As a CIA officer, she worked at home and abroad to collect vital intelligence, keep our country safe, and work in furtherance of our national security priorities. Representative Spanberger serves on the U.S. House Committee on Agriculture and the U.S. House Committee on Foreign Affairs. Congressman Rob Wittman has represented the 1st Congressional District of Virginia since 2007. Congressman Wittman serves on the House Armed Services Committee and the Committee on Natural Resources. On the Armed Services Committee, Rob serves as ranking member of the Sea Power and Projection Forces Subcommittee. The congressman also serves as co-chair of the House Rural Broadband Caucus, and through this work, helps bring high-speed internet to unserved areas of our country. Now, in addition to the other work on behalf of their constituents, Spanberger and Wittman's legislation, the Freedom to Invest in Tomorrow's Workforce Act, will enable associations nationwide and American workers of all education levels to further benefit the economy through expanded use of 529 education savings plans. Congresswoman Spanberger, the floor is yours.
Thank you so very, very much. I appreciate the wonderful introduction, and I appreciate you all taking the time to invite me to join you today, and thank you to Susan for that lovely introduction. I'd like to thank ASAE for their continued commitment to pursuing policies that can help expand opportunity for all of America's workers. And I'm honored and so appreciative to receive this award today with my friend and colleague, Congressman Wittman. I also truly appreciate the opportunity to participate in this event, and I look forward to our discussions of the critical importance of how we're prioritizing workforce development and promoting middle-skilled jobs. Especially in this moment of widespread economic uncertainty, your mission couldn't be more important. We all need to work together to build a brighter future for America's families, businesses, and economy. And fundamentally, that begins with the education and training of America's workforce. You all recognize that learning, knowledge, and a focus on the challenges ahead are the keys to long-term economic success. You understand the importance of adapting to our times and ultimately having confidence in the strength and resolve of the American worker. Now for some facts. According to National Skills Coalition, middle-skilled jobs comprise the largest component of America's labor market. However, many key industries have been unable to fill these jobs, and because they haven't been able to find adequately trained workers. This is something I hear about across the district from employers who are unable to hire those with the skills that they're looking for. And this is where Congress can play a role, and with a focus on policy where we can help achieve some progress. I represent a district in Central Virginia that's really a cross-section of so much of America. It's a diverse district. I represent both densely populated areas and very rural communities. The people I represent identify with policy positions and ideologies across the spectrum. But in our district, like so many across the country, we are feeling the impacts of this crisis, the pandemic, along with thousands of communities across the United States. This virus does not distinguish between Democrats or Republicans or rural or suburban communities, and we are all sharing the same challenges. The people I represent expect me to work with my colleagues to advocate for solutions that will expand opportunity for their businesses and for their families. And since I've arrived in the House, I've been committed to having focused conversations with the Central Virginians I represent about the challenges they're facing, whether they're the employees seeking jobs or the companies looking to hire talent. And in these conversations, the one refrain that continues to come up repeatedly is that students and workers need the training that's required to remain competitive and successful in the workforce. And if this can be achieved, workers will find jobs, families will enjoy a better standard of living, and our businesses here in Virginia can grow and continue to contribute to our regional economy. And while we must enable our workers to attain the skills needed to stay competitive in a global and rapidly changing economy, the real challenge is helping those who are pursuing these jobs pay for the requisite credentialing and licensing programs, particularly in a moment where millions of Americans have now lost their jobs and are looking for new opportunities. We can't afford to see them get left behind simply because they lack the adequate training or the funds for those trainings. Additionally, as our country needs to recognize that these programs have the ability to reach a broader and much more diverse group of students, of potential workers, than those who attend 2- or 4-year colleges. And so to address this challenge, Congressman Wittman and I introduced the Freedom to Invest in Tomorrow's Workforce Act in December of 2019. And I was grateful to have the support of ASAE when we introduced the bill. This bill would give individuals across the country the freedom to use their 529 savings accounts to cover the costs of certain workforce training or credentialing programs. Additionally, the bill would allow students to use their 529 funds to pay for associated costs related to certification exams and maintaining certification credentials. In Virginia, 529 savings accounts have long ensured that the next generation of workers can afford a higher education, that families can save and individuals can save. But students are currently constrained from using these accounts to pay for necessary credentialing programs and exams. And so this bipartisan legislation would help fix that by giving students and workers the ability to use their 529 accounts to cover tuition, books, testing costs related to training programs. I know that Virginia 529 has been particularly excited about this legislation, and I've heard them express how it would build pathways to employment and career growth across many fields, and I'm grateful for their participation and support. I've been proud to stand alongside Congressman Wittman in introducing and garnering support for this bill. I thank him for his commitment to the next generation of Virginia students and workers, but our work is far from over. In the coming months and years, we must keep building new pathways to make these programs more affordable and accessible, especially as we continue to see incredibly specialized trades emerging in Central Virginia and across the country. Please be in touch with my office. If you have any idea as to how we can achieve this goal, please let me know if I can be helpful. I look forward to your questions. And again, thank you for recognizing the strength of this bill, and thank you for inviting me to join you all today.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Spanberger. We truly appreciate your remarks. Congressman Wittman, I'd like to turn the floor over to you.
Okay, very good. Well, Susan, thank you, and good morning. I want to thank ASAE for all the great work that you do in advocating for workforce skill development. And just as Abigail said, it's incredibly important that we get what I call enabling mechanisms in place for workers to advance their skills. HR 5339 does exactly that, in allowing the 529 accounts to be used for their continued education purposes. You know, as we see what's happening around us today with COVID-19, what we're seeing, I believe, is a change in the workforce. As individuals are coming back to go to work, many of them that have been displaced from previous jobs are looking at other employment opportunities. Many of them, too, are finding the jobs they were once in may not be there, and they are requiring to be retrained. And I think that's going to be critical today, is to make sure we have expansive opportunities for training, and in some instances, retraining or advancement of skills, and especially in what I call the middle skill sector jobs. I want people to begin to develop the workforce skills in the lower skill jobs, but to be able to have that segue to work themselves to career advancement. And the key to be able to do that, to get to those middle skill jobs, is educational opportunities, to make sure that they can get in and get those certifications and credentials. And what we've seen in many instances is it's both time and resources that limit them from being able to do that. What I have heard from workers is that while a certification or credentialing course may cost $300, $400, $500, and to many that doesn't seem like much, for an individual that's on a limited income and that has a family, $300, $400, $500 may as well be $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000. So making sure that we access every element of dollars that are out there, allow 529 accounts to be used so that workers can save, or so that those dollars can be used also for their children, I think is absolutely critical, because resources do matter in making sure that individuals have access to the training programs necessary in order to advance their job skills. I think that in the workforce, we are going to undergo as large a change in the requisite training necessary for individuals to seek higher skilled jobs in the next 5 years than we have in the past 20. We live in the age of technology. We live in a world where these skills are going to be necessary in order for individuals to compete for the jobs of tomorrow. And education is going to be key with that. So I want to make sure that we are providing all of the necessary opportunities there for students to be able to get the necessary training and to be able to fill those jobs. And it's critically important that Congress is part of that states are part of that, and that even local governments are part of that. You know, our community colleges play a critical role here. We've had a lot of conversations with community colleges, a lot of conversations with folks at the state level in workforce development that's happening there. We want to make sure that there's coordination at every level, that there's not duplication of services. We want to make sure, too, that every institution that provides those training opportunities is part of this. We want to make sure, too, that professional organizations are part of this. You know, as we talk about the organizations that represent certain skills and trades, we need to make sure that they are engaged. And we need to make sure, too, that they're engaged not just in identifying what training and skill development is needed, but how are they going to work with the different institutions that provide that training, that provide those certifications and credentials? How do we make sure that what is happening in career and technical education programs in high schools is reflective of what the job market needs? How do we make sure that what's happening in curriculum in community colleges is reflective of what the job market needs? The best way to do that is to make sure that employers are part of that and provide that specific information as to what needs to be in these curriculums. What do high schools need to be teaching? What do community colleges need to be teaching? What do certification and credentialing programs need to be focusing on to make sure that these students have the job skills that make them immediately employable? Because as I said, technology changes, the job market changes, and it's critically important that we keep up with that. So we're looking for every way possible. I want to thank Abigail for her leadership and for her partnership in this. You know, the things that need to get done in this nation, and I'll wax a little broader in my perspective. The things that need to get done in this nation, I believe, the vast majority of them, folks, are nonpartisan. There is not a Republican or Democrat way to enhance career and technical education. There's not a Republican or Democrat way to enhance workforce development. There is the right way, and the right way is where we talk to everybody across the spectrum. We take the great ideas that are out there, we put those together, and we look to find ways that the federal government can be an enabler to enable our individuals to pursue the training that they need, an enabler for our instructional institutions, an enabler for professional organizations to do all we can to make sure that the workforce of tomorrow is there today. And that's going to be our challenge going forward. I think with what's happened with COVID-19, the number of people coming back into the workforce, I think that this will be the most significant time of change in the United States workforce that we've seen since World War II. So I think we're all in for the challenge. And again, I want to thank ASAE. I want to thank Abigail. And we are all ready to get to work and help and do all that we can to make sure that, again, we have the workforce of tomorrow today.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the remarks, both Congresswoman Spanberger and Congressman Wittman. We truly appreciate them, and I think associations are very much in line with the intent that you have described. So I have an interesting task right now, or an opportunity ahead of me, and that is to proudly present both of you with ASAE Sentinel Awards. The Sentinel Awards are significant in that they represent and they honor steadfast support of the association community. So we're truly appreciative of both of your efforts and the intent of those. One of the ways that associations help our society and help our communities is through certification, and also through promoting workforce development, as well as competition through informed consumer choice. So your support of associations overall is very much supported. The Freedom to Invest in Tomorrow's Workforce Act would be an absolutely great step forward in allowing individuals to use those funds to obtain a post-secondary credential, including a certification. And its passage will enable associations to even more profoundly benefit society and the economy. So you will find these back in your offices when we all return to work. But Congresswoman Spanberger, I am presenting you with your Sentinel Award. There it is. We're so pleased to present you with this.
Thank you. I'm receiving it. I appreciate that.
And Congressman Wittman, here is your award, and I'm peeking out around it. Thank you very much for all that you've done to support associations. And as I said, we will deliver these to your offices when they're open again, and when our office is open again too. So again, we appreciate your comments so much. And you find yourself in, as we're entering into a Q&A period here, that you answered all the questions that we had. So those were very, very thorough remarks, and we're grateful. But I'm going to turn it over to Denise to ask a question, and then come back to me for a follow-up.
Great. Thank you so much, Susan. And thank you so much for joining us today, Congresswoman Spanberger and Congressman Wittman. We're so grateful for your leadership on the Freedom to Invest in Tomorrow's Workforce Act. So we'd like to start with each of you giving a little bit more of your perspective on why and how certifications and other credentials, skills training are so vital for a dynamic economy. I think that's really what we're speaking to today. And so, Congresswoman Spanberger, why don't we start with you if there's more detail or more perspective you'd like to share on that?
Sure. So these middle skill jobs that don't require a 4-year education, but do require specific training or certifications, make up the largest sector of the job market. And across the district that I represent, which is neighbors, Rob's district, we're on his western side. I hear every time I visit a business, small business, kind of new emerging businesses, but then also when I visit community colleges, there's this mix where there are not enough workers that have the specific skill sets, and they're not 4-year college degrees necessarily, or even for students or individuals, workers who have a 4-year college degree, they still need additional training to fill the jobs that are available in our region. And I'm hearing from community colleges and their leadership, that they're working to adapt and ensure that they can offer credentialing programs that suit and fill the needs of employers around Virginia. But there's still the challenge of how do you get workers into those programs? How do you let workers know that those programs exist? And one of the challenges, and Rob mentioned it, is particularly for those who might be career changers, who's, at a point when they have a family or kids, are looking to shift and perhaps, improve upon their career trajectory, but it requires a $300 or $400 class or a $300 or $400 certification and the books that go along with it. The ability to invest in a 529, make a plan for how it is that they may go through that program is so incredibly important. And for families that have the ability to plan for their own children's education, who are able to invest in 529s for their kids, knowing that that actually allows their child to have greater flexibility when he or she's entering the job market. I think part of what constrains us in a community is for so long we've been looking at college or not. Do you go into college or do you go into a particular trade? And even broadening that conversation where we're talking about 529 and we're talking about savings programs, saying you can go to a 4-year college, you can go to a 2-year college, you can pursue this path that requires these trainings, and this we can use 529s for that benefit. I think it's actually bringing into the conversation a greater acknowledgement and kind of societal engagement with many of these middle skill jobs, which frankly, I think far too many people don't consider until the point that they're actually entering the job market and recognize what's out there. And maybe at that point they've worked through a couple of years in a 4-year institution and gone down that path. And there's so much in terms of what we can do for our economy and our workforce by ensuring that people have a greater knowledge of the types of jobs that exist, and then the ability, of course, to get the certifications that are necessary to pursue those careers.
Great point. I think that's clearly you understand the challenges here, and really appreciate that perspective. Congressman Wittman, do you have anything that you would like to share or build on from Congressman Spanberger's comments?
Sure. Let's see. Hold on for a second. Let me make sure. I'm sorry. There we go. Yes, absolutely. Abigail brought up a lot of great points. I want to add something to that, and that is if you look at where we are going to be as a nation in the demand for workers, from today on, 60% of the new jobs will not require a 2 or 4 year degree, but they will require certification or credential. So if we're going to prepare our constituents, the citizens of the Commonwealth, and Americans for the jobs of the future, we're going to have to make sure we have a very robust program for certifications and credentials. And across many skill sets, there is a large demand for workers today. And what we find in the workforce is an imbalance. We find demands in certain areas that are unmet because there's not the requisite skill sets there, or certifications or credentials. So our challenge is going to be to make sure that we get the necessary skill sets there for workers to make sure that they are ready to be able to fill those jobs. I apologize, there's some construction going on next to our office, and we've got a little bit of noise going on. They're putting in new sewer lines. But the good thing is those are skilled workers that are doing that job right there. We need to make sure they get the training necessary to be able to fill those jobs. So that's really where we are. So we have a challenge to make sure we look at every opportunity to assure that workers can get the skills necessary to fill those jobs, and make sure too that they have the resources in many different ways to be able to pay for those certification tests or credentials or elsewhere.
Thank you so much, Congressman. Just to follow up on that, and perhaps the construction next door, as I understand it, some trades such as plumbing, carpentry, and electrical are not included. And if that is the case, and perhaps you can address what trade schools are included in the legislation, what can be done to promote these jobs? Because as you say, those middle level or skilled labor jobs are going to be increasingly important. So do you have a comment to follow up on that? And really, I can open that up to either one of you to comment on.
Sure. Well, I think that it's going to be critically important that we have the opportunities there, because those skill sets are going to be in increasing demand.
Yes.
And I think the key too is to make sure that parents and their children understand where the jobs are available, what those jobs entail, so that they understand that their children can be successful without having to go to a 4-year school or a 2-year school. And I think that's incredibly important. I always tell the story of my son who went to a 4-year college for 1 year, did well, but just didn't see that it suited what he wanted to do. And then he went to a community college for a year after that, and then came to me and said, "Dad, I'm wasting your money." And he had in mind that he wanted to do something out on the water. He was very interested in maritime side, so he decided he was going to go off to maritime school. So he got his unlimited certification. So now he can pilot anything or captain any ship on the high seas. Today he runs a large commercial fishing vessel up and down the East Coast. Loves what he does, but again, it's one of those things where he on his own discovered that. But I think a lot of times parents will kind of pigeonhole their children and say, you have to do this. You have to get a college degree. You have to be able to get this, and then figure it out later. The problem is we live in such a specialized world today that you can't limit what your children are looking at. You have to say, look at what's out there in the job sector. And we have to do a better job of educating parents to let them know that their children can be as successful in a career technical education field as they can in pursuing a 4-year degree. So I think those things are critical. We've got to do more in our elementary and middle school systems to make sure that we are providing information to parents and their children so they know where these opportunities are. My wife's a school teacher, and we talk about it all the time about having that conversation at an early age. I think it has to start in 5th grade to let folks know what opportunities are there.
Thank you. Denise, you have another question?
I do. Both of you have mentioned how critically important bipartisanship is in passing this kind of legislation. And I was hoping that you might be able to talk a little bit about what your process is for working in a bipartisanship kind of environment. What do you actually do to help facilitate that? And Congresswoman Spanberger, why don't we start with you?
Absolutely. So I'm much newer to Congress than Rob. So in the way that I've engaged and worked to be bipartisan, I've taken a couple tacks. One, like Rob, I also represent a district that has significant rural communities with broadband internet accessibility challenges. And so if you want to find a bipartisan issue, that's a great place to start and meet a lot of friends across the aisle. So I've been very intentional with the things that I'm focusing on. I think when we're looking for places to find bipartisanship, I think Rob hit the nail on the head. There are certain challenges that face our communities, and when we find what those challenges are, what the shared challenges are, to be able to sit down and say, here's one piece of the pie that is perhaps a problem, right? We have these jobs, we have people who do not have the skill sets for them. How can we help people get that training? How can we make it easier to attain that training? And so, with this particular bill, that was the process. And then, I know that Rob has done a lot of work in the workforce development and education space. So he was a very easy and clear partner for us, for our offices to join together, because he has a lot of experience in having worked in this space before. So I think to pursue bipartisanship, there's a certain intentionality. You have to look, where can we agree? Where's a problem that we want to pursue and address together? Where are some solutions that we can come to? And then for me, as a newer member to Congress, I also have joined a group called the Problem Solvers Caucus, which is half Democrats, half Republicans. It's like Noah's Ark. You got to join with someone from the other party. And we meet at least once a week. Even when we're not in DC, we do Zoom meetings and the rest. But when we're on Capitol Hill, we have breakfast once a week. And we talk about legislation, find places where we can partner, debate over policy differences, and really look to find common ground where it's available, or frankly, just understand each other's opinions when there are differences. And so that, as a new member of Congress, has been a great organization or caucus for me to be a part of, because everybody at the table is seeking to work across party lines, or at least, understand the opinions of those who may differ with them politically.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Congressman Wittman, perhaps you could, and also welcome Congresswoman Spanberger's thoughts on this. How can associations support you in this? What can we do that will help to move the needle and give this the kind of support so we can cross the finish line?
Well, I think the biggest thing that associations can do is let us know what are the challenges, what are the things that need to happen in order for your members to be successful, in order for us to make sure we're making the right connections with the federal government and things that it can do, or the things that it needs to stay out of doing to free up the states and local governments to do the things that they need to do. But I think your perspective is most valuable to us. As Abigail and I travel across our districts, we hear from a lot of individuals. But the neat thing about associations is that you all are a collective to get very specific information from folks, and then be able to condense that and say, okay, what we're hearing across the spectrum, not just in folks in Virginia, but across the nation is here are the things we need to do in workforce development. And if the federal government were to do this, or if we were to direct resources in this way, this would be much more valuable to us than what we see as the status quo. So I think your collective experience, your collective ability to gather information and provide it to us is the most helpful aspect of what associations can do to engage with legislators, to help guide actions by the United States Congress, and then to make sure that what happens there is something that is substantive and that is based in reality. I think that's the way legislating is supposed to take place. It should be from the ground up. It should be through associations. It should be through individuals and companies to hear what's necessary and how do we make that happen.
Great.
And I would add, I agree with everything Rob said, but I would also mention anyone on the call, as an individual constituent, I think there's always value in making your member of Congress aware of your support, if you support it, for this piece of legislation. Certainly, Rob and I have done some aggressive outreach in our work to get additional people to support this bill. But frankly, with the challenges that we're facing with the pandemic, some bills like this are not top of mind for many of our colleagues, understandably. So if as an individual, you're inclined to mention to your member of Congress that you think this is a great bill and wanted to bring it to their attention, certainly I know that when we hear from constituents advocating for particular pieces of legislation, we give ample thought and consideration to those bills.
That's a great segue, I think, into talking a little bit about COVID-19 and some of the economic setbacks that we certainly are seeing. And for those Americans who are suffering some employment disruption, I'm wondering if you could address either how this bill will move us forward once we are back and engaged in full in the economy, or what you see that impact looking like down the road. Congressman Wittman, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Well, as I said earlier, I think that this time in our nation's history is going to be one of the most dynamic times of employment that we've seen since World War II. With so many people out of work, with the job market changing and what happens after COVID-19, some businesses will change. Some businesses are doing well, some not so well. I think there'll be a big change in not just the workforce, but the skills required for people to go back to work. That is where I believe HR 5339 comes into play, to make sure that individuals that maybe hadn't thought about retraining today are saying, gosh, I need to get retrained in order to be eligible for the jobs that are out there. And then two, to make sure that people can use this opportunity as a way to advance themselves. And many of them may think, hey, now's the time for me as I get back into the workforce, as I am transitioning off of the unemployment benefits back into the workforce, how do I make sure I have the requisite skills to take that next step? Sometimes you don't have the luxury of doing that previously. Now you do. You do have a little bit of time there to be able to say, how can I get those skills? So I think this is going to be, as I said, one of the most dynamic times in the workforce in America. And I think it's a great opportunity for workers reevaluate where they are, to look at how they can enhance their skills and how they can be competitive for the jobs that are not only there today, but will be out there in the months to come as the workforce begins to regenerate, businesses begin to rehire as we get back to work as a nation.
And if I can add to that, I think also there's a piece here where, you know, the disruptions that high school students have felt, that college students have felt, are profound in, I think, how it's impacting their view of the future and what opportunities exist. And I think that recognizing that a student who might have a 529 because the student's parents were able to put away some savings that they thought might be directed towards a four-year college, as they're taking stock of what options exist in the job market, like Rob's example with his son, perhaps it would be slightly expedited because of the crisis of where we are, where students say, you know, this is where I really want to be. How do I get there? What training do I need? And so the disruptions in the job market have been so significant that I think that even recognizing the broader scope of possibilities that exist outside of a traditional 2 or 4 year degree, I think people are thinking about that far more. At least I'm hearing it from constituents, and particularly from parents of middle school and high school kids thinking about their children's own trajectory.
You know, just to underscore a comment that both of you have made, there's a comment in our chat from one of our participants about vocational education not necessarily maybe being cast in a negative light. You know, much to your point, Congressman Wittman, about, you know, you have to encourage jobs at all levels. So I wanted to let you know that that's really being reflected in some of the comments that we're seeing. It's an interesting question. I'll start with you, Congresswoman Spanberger. And that is, are there any incentives planned for employers to support their workers who are interested in credentialing programs or certification programs?
So this is from a federal perspective, a federal tax incentive program. This is typically a point of conversation. I'm not sure of any specific programs that might be under consideration because of COVID-19 at this time. But I can check into that and get back to you all. I don't know if Rob is aware of any of them.
Yeah, Abigail, I'm not aware of anything that's specifically out there or that's very specific that's been directed through the CARES Act. I know there's been a lot of discussion about how do we take the unexpended dollars in the CARES Act, and as we talk about the next step in legislation, how do we get those to spots that we have heard need these dollars? So I think that'll be a great opportunity for us. So if anybody in ASAE has an idea about how can we use the dollars that are out there to redirect, to get to the right places, to make sure we're doing even more in workforce development, especially as our economy transitions through this time, please let us know, because I think there'll be an opportunity there. And Abigail and I think we'll have an opportunity in the weeks to come to look at legislation that gets at some of the additional challenges that are out there for us. And I think at the top of the list is going to be workforce development and broadband. And I can assure you, both Abigail and I will be on board to make sure we're advocating that whatever dollars are out there go to both of those areas. So
That's right.
folks,
Okay.
let us know where we can be of help there.
They're both very important. Denise, do you have another question? I've one, if I can have the liberty, but I'll defer to you if you have a question.
You can go right ahead.
Well, you brought up kind of a key flag about money, and so I'm just going to start with the question. I'm sure that both of you know that many associations are under tremendous pressure because of COVID. It's shut down some of the traditional sources of revenue that associations need in order to sustain themselves or even to grow. You know, live face-to-face meetings are just one example, but as we get further into the pandemic, many of our sources of revenue and value propositions are under siege. ASAE and others have been working really hard to see that C6 organizations are part of the next round of funding for the Paycheck Protection Program. So my question for either one of you, you can weigh in as you'd like, is do you see Congress addressing the PPP in the next relief package? And you know, do you think that they would also possibly reauthorize the program as it exists beyond the current end date of June 30th? So the first part is C6s in the PPP and your outlook on congressional action.
I'm happy to take a jump at this one.
Sure.
So I think at this point, with the next congressional actions related to the relief focused on COVID-19, I think the next place where we'll see action that I'm kind of willing to bet will happen will be support to localities and counties across the country. This is an element that has had significant bipartisan support, and many of our localities, certainly across Virginia and across the country, are suffering for some of the same reasons that you mentioned. I do see progress on that front. In terms of inclusion of C6s and additional another round of PPP, there's certainly discussions about that. I am just being very much realistic about it. I think that those conversations are not nearly as far ahead as conversations related to support to state and local governments, particularly smaller localities. But I will note that we did pass the PPP Fairness Act, which was a bill that changed the 75-25 rule. So for any small businesses, the 75-25 rule that any small business that received PPP funding, that was the allocation of payroll versus other overhead. We changed that to 60-40 to provide a much more flexibility in how small businesses can use those funds. And then we did lengthen the amount of time for businesses to meet the threshold for loan forgiveness, and then extended for businesses that aren't intending for it to be a forgivable loan. We extended the time frame for them to actually pay that loan back from 2 to 5 years. So there's been some shifts with PPP, but at this point, to answer your question, I don't see that on the immediate horizon. But I would note I don't serve on the committee of jurisdiction, so there might be some greater conversations happening that haven't percolated to where I would be hearing about them.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Congressman, any follow-up comments?
Yeah, I would agree with Abigail. There's been a number of discussions about additional organizations, including C6s, to be included under PPP. Nothing at this particular point, I think, manifesting itself in actual elements in the next piece of legislation that's at least being talked about. The one place, though, that does hold a little bit of potential is there's about $100 billion left in the PPP account. Many banks have stopped writing PPP loans. So the one little ray of hope would be potentially, if there are unexpended dollars there, to look at then expanding the number of organizations that could then be eligible for that. The challenge is going to be, let's say you have a full $100 billion left over, and there's $300 or $400 billion of demand with the various organizations out there. Then it creates sort of a complicated calculus about how to make that work. But that would be the one area where I think there could be some potential. But I agree with Abigail. It has not gotten to the level of other discussions, especially about what we're going to do to help many local governments and the challenges that they face.
Thank you. Thank you. Denise, do you have an additional question? And we also have one from our audience.
Sure. I really just want to thank you both for your commitment to problem solving over politics, and clearly your recognition from ASAE is so well deserved. You're definitely making us all proud. I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about the reality of working in this COVID-19 world. We all know what it's like to have to lead teams from remote places, and just wondering how things are going for your teams, your offices, and how you're working through this very challenging time.
Well, I'll jump in. I'm sure Abigail's staff and her operations are the same as mine. We are doing all we can to make sure that we are in touch with folks. I never thought I would do as much communication in the virtual realm. And I go back to an old Aretha Franklin song. I think we all are singing "Who's Zooming Who" in these days. But I think it's made us much more aware of how we can transact business digitally. I wouldn't say that it's it's the perfect way to do it, but I do believe that there are other opportunities where we can do things at distance in the future. So I think it's been a great learning curve for all of us. I do think it's a way for us to stay in touch. One thing that it's really brought to light is that, and I'll go back to this, is connectivity. You know, whether it's what we're doing with our students. My wife's a school teacher, and she's been at home and digitally contacting her students on a daily basis, or whether it's doctors trying to see patients because they're only allowing COVID-19 patients into doctors' offices, or used to only allow them into doctors' offices and hospitals, or whether it's businesses trying to find a different way to operate. I think what we see is that the digital realm holds an awful lot of promise, but the one element that limits things is connectivity. So I think as we talk about what the next step is to invest in America, I think broadband is going to be right at the top of the list. I think any infrastructure bill has to have broadband. And there's a great opportunity there. You know, we see school systems thinking creatively. They use the CARES Act money to create Wi-Fi hotspots. So they've taken school buses and they put transmitters and antennas in school buses to create Wi-Fi hotspots for their students. Well, if school systems and localities can do that, there's no reason why we can't make those places permanent. I mean, why would you, after COVID-19, say, we're going to take the school bus away, we're not going to have a hotspot there? So I think there's a lot of opportunity there as we go forward. The digital realm has shown us what we can do at distance. I think it will make us more efficient, but it will only work in the long term if we have that element of connectivity.
Thank you.
I agree with everything that Rob said. I think the one challenge has been I'm going to comment on what I saw pop up. What the one challenge has been the level of personal engagement, either with our own teams. Frankly, if anybody's ever watched Congress in session, it's, you know, people squeezing through crowded spaces as 400 plus people come in to vote. So there's a lot that can happen on the floor of the House when we're bustling by each other. But I do think that even when we're looking past COVID into the future, some of the ways that we can continue with what's worked, you know, some from the question about the fly-ins and doing virtual fly-ins, you know, in-person fly-in meetings are fantastic. They're really, really valuable. But if we know we can convey the same message and it might be cost savings for an organization, you know, I absolutely perceive of a place or a future where my team will continue to offer that virtual meetings as an option. Again, connectivity is an issue, particularly for many of the people I represent. But the fact that it used to be incumbent upon who could actually fly into DC to do these sort of fly-in meetings, perhaps we've really recognized that an event like this, where we can have so many people on one line, it does give a little bit greater access. And, you know, while we're bringing back in more of some of the traditional means of communication and engagement, I think we should really continue to keep the ones that we've shown work, and provide us just one more option for a way to stay connected.
Well, thank you. We're finding the same thing in our own work, Congresswoman, because as we think about face-to-face meetings coming back and having a virtual component to complement that, I think we're seeing things the same way. So more to follow. I just want to take this opportunity. I think we've had a lot of good questions. Someone has accused the congressman of now having 80s era Aretha in his head, thanks to you. So your words have been inspiring in a variety of ways. But seriously, we thank you so much for the time you've spent with us today. And also, I just want to go back and shine a light on how deserving you both are of the Sentinel Award. That's our way of recognizing your support of associations. And you truly do that. And in return, associations will support you in every way you can. I think you've given us some really good ideas about how we can do that in tangible ways as organizations, as well as, and I think this is important, as individuals. So we'll be very active on that. We appreciate your legislation, we appreciate your efforts, and we appreciate your time today. So Denise, anything to say in closing?
No, I echo your thoughts and gratitude. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was really an interesting, meaningful conversation. So we look forward to continuing to work with you.
All right.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Congressman,
Thank you, Susan.
Congresswoman, thank you. Thank you. We'll look forward to more work.
Thank you,
Take
Susan
care.
and Denise. Thank you very much. Thank you all
Have a
so
great
much.
afternoon. Okay.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Good day.
Stay
Bye
safe.
now.
Thank
Thanks, will
you.
do. Thanks.
Bye-bye.